The Economic Development Council meeting. Quite a few new members here, at least since I've been here last, so we should start with going around and introducing ourselves. I'm Steve Langley, Chair.
Derek Horn.
Chris Nando, Planning Board.
Andrew Carteret.
Alan Brown, Selectman.
Tim Redmond.
Charlie Tentis.
Okay, so we want to move on to approving minutes. Is that what you want to do next?
Yeah, that'd be great. We have minutes from January 30th, which present was Steve Langley, Selectman LeMay, Brian Fournier, myself, and Charlie Tentis. So I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that. Any discussion? I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
You want to move on to March 6th?
Sure. That was present with Steve Langley, Selectman LeMay, myself, and Andrew Carteret.
I'll make a motion to accept them.
Any discussion?
Or I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye. And then the April 10th was myself, Andrew Carteret, Brian Fournier, Charlie Tentis, Selectman Brown, Chris Nadeau, and Richard Bruno.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, move on to old and new business, election of officers.
Right now, the chair is Steve Langley, and I believe, Charlie, you're serving as the vice chair. And normally the process is to receive a nomination for chair for another year and then follow it up with a nomination for vice chair.
So I'll speak at once. Who wants the job? Charlie's already said that he travels too much because I had
Traveling a
him
lot
on the
more
docket.
this coming year.
Well, I
so-
nominate
Feeling-
you again
Wow.
to be.
I nominate you.
Here comes the train. Here comes the train.
Well, I'd nominate Andrew, but if you don't want the position, if you can't,
Yeah, no, I don't
At this
think I
time, I-
would commit to that at this time.
Tim?
Yeah, I just got here.
Well, I
I'll
guess-
nominate Steve Langley as chair. Or second your motion if it was a real nomination.
Yes, that was.
I'll second your motion.
If he wants the position.
Gotta
All in
nominate.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Guess I'm here for another year.
Worst thing can happen to you.
Okay, we need a vice chair. Do you want to keep the position, Charlie, or are you-
I'll keep it.
That's
I
the
mean, there will be
question.
times when I'm traveling, I won't be here, but.
Anybody want to nominate anybody different for the position? I guess we don't have to vote on that, do we? If he,
No, I would.
I'll nominate Charlie for
Okay.
vice.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, Charlie.
No big shake up here tonight.
Status quo.
That's it.
All right. The next item I had on the agenda was the Economic Development Self-Assessment Tool. This is something that I've kind of talked about the last couple months and would like to move it forward to the point of start actually to go out and reach an agreement and move forward with it. I've got just a little overview memo that has real just bullet points of what it is. The cost, it's $5,000 for the analysis and report presentation. The time frame to complete the assessment is you can do it as fast as 1 to 2 months. Talking with Northeastern, they say normally most communities do it over 6 months. And you basically get participants from EDC, local businesses, real estate, Chamber of Commerce. Here we would involve Main Street, obviously. You'd have to look at your workforce, so St. Anselm College, the New Hampshire Tech, and then municipal leaders. And basically what it is, just to recap, is it is a 200-question survey, basically, that all those participants sit down and answer together, and they work on it together. And that information and the answer to those questions goes back to Northeastern University. They compile it against industry standards that they've worked out with different businesses that businesses have determined that they choose a municipality over a region. Over the last couple of years, we've worked really hard to continue with the regional effort, which is important for, Access Greater Manchester. But when it really comes down to, once they've determined a region, they're going to look at each municipality against each other. And the answers that those businesses and site selectors gave back to Northeastern, there are certain factors that municipalities can control and they can't control. There are certain ones that are worth trying to change and ones that aren't as important. And this takes those answers that you've given and against those, and it basically gives you a roadmap of what you need to change and what you need to focus on and help you towards working towards an economic development strategy. And then the bottom of that first page is just other New Hampshire municipalities that have done it, and they said basically this was in the time frame of mostly 2006 to 2009. Bow, Londonderry, Merrimack. You see Londonderry and Merrimack, they did that prior to their master plan update, so they can use it to drive their master plan, which we will be doing, the town of Goffstown will be doing in the next 2, 3, 4 years. The last time it was done in Goffstown was the process started in 2004, but it finished up in 2006. Rochester used it to help develop their economic development strategy plan, and same with Wyndham. And out of it, one of the things that came out of the Wyndham one was they developed the Chamber of Commerce as a result of their participation. I asked everyone to watch Dr. Bluestone's presentation. It is a dry and long presentation, but if you prefer, it's about 45 minutes. We could watch it tonight or just discuss, because like I said, I think it would help us develop an economic development strategy, kind of take the momentum from the Plan Pinardville project that we're going on, and it could help us figure out and drive the master plan in a couple years.
Anybody have any questions?
Derek, where does the money come from, the $5,000?
The Economic Development Council has $4,000 budgeted every year. Since I've been here, we've only spent a fraction of it on some of we've used it on the Business Expo the last couple of years. There wasn't a Business Expo this year. In the past, the Economic Development Council has used that on appraisals when they were looking at different properties about whether or not the town would acquire those for economic development uses. But I would say that EDC could use $4,000 from that, and then what we could do is we could request and write a grant proposal to the Goffstown Industrial Corporation, or work with the town hall administration to try and find $1,000 somewhere in the existing budget to cover that.
Is this board autonomous to spend that money, or do we have to go before the board of selectmen and request?
In the past, the EDC has done a formal vote to move forward with something, and then I would, because it exceeds that $4,000, I would talk to the town administrator and, if necessary, bring it before the board of selectmen.
And our budget cycle ends when?
December 31st. We're
So this would
we're
be
calendar.
all of our allocated funds would be gone with this one allocation.
Correct. But again, I see it as the next 6 months. Mm-hmm. You can use some of those contacts from Plan Pinardville, some of the participants that you have there to roll them in the effort for this. Mm-hmm. And as well as pull in Main Street and some of the other organizations to really develop an economic development strategy.
Can I ask another question? Mm-hmm. So these towns that are on this list, do you have contacts there, or can you get like references about the value of this to those communities?
Yeah, I can. Yeah,
I mean, Bow did it, in 2004. So what was the impact? Was it that type of a feedback, I guess?
Yeah, the only one that I've talked to Laura Scott in Wyndham, and that's where she expressed one of their big things that came out of that was the creation of the Wyndham Chamber of Commerce in 2009. And they found that that was one of the things that they were lacking, was the support for the businesses down there. So that that was part that really did that. And then I can talk to Andre. He was in Londonderry when they did it in Londonderry, and see what feedback he has, as well as some of the other communities.
Yeah, I think Bow, Milford, and Pelham would be, and Rochester would be really good, since they've had several years to see what the impact has had.
Even, the Londonderry or Milford, it's kind of like
Yeah.
a community the same size.
Exactly, Milford would be fantastic. And even Bow, since they're economic challenge town.
Go ahead, Tim.
I just would question the expense of the whole fund for one shot to try to develop something that we might be able to work on our own. We could develop our own Chamber of Commerce without entering into an agreement. I mean, if you put a lot of time into this, I appreciate it. But, if that's our whole budget, I would think very carefully about committing our entire budget to one project. On the subject of the master plan, having been involved with the other boards, the master plan is a great tool, but we don't always get great benefits from what the master plan has told us. I mean, we try to encourage pedestrian traffic in neighborhoods in the town of Goffstown village area, and we meet with resistance sometimes when we try to utilize those tools, when we try to put in sidewalks and different things. So I just would caution the board about, or the council here rather, about jumping into it without getting the information that you're willing to get forward. Still have, 2 more years left, I think, on the master plan, right?
They say, Joanne, maybe you can, I know you're the minute taker, every 5 to 10 years you should update it, and it was adopted in 2006.
Yeah, the 10-year benchmark was coming up, I thought.
Yep. And I think the town planner, Brian Rose, did enter it into CIP last year. It may have been in 2014.
Got bumped out last year.
Yep. So
Not that it's not important. We just,
Maybe before we make a decision, maybe you should watch that.
Yeah.
Speak from.
I will.
It was pretty interesting, and I think it was pretty enlightening. So I think I don't get the feeling everybody wants to sit here and watch it tonight. I mean, you could watch it online and you can, scan through it, but there is some good information there.
I will.
So do we want to, before we move forward on that, do we want to let the members have this month to watch that, and next month we discuss it again? Is that
I can do that, and it sounds like some people would like maybe some references from some of the other communities.
That other feedback would be
Some
very
of the
helpful.
feedback of what they got from it. Absolutely. I can do that.
And what's the possibility on trying to get a larger grant from the Industrial Council?
I can ask the question and write up a proposal.
If we're concerned about using all of our funds for that. Because personally, I'm in favor of the EDSAT. I think it's got merit.
And there may be other places that we can get grants from, too.
But we have this budget. I agree that we should use some of it for worthwhile ventures like this, and if the Goffstown Industrial Council is willing to consider a larger grant, that would keep us from using it all.
Sorry, go ahead.
Percentage-wise, when we have funding every year, how much do we normally use? Or do
In
we
the
turn
last-
most of it back?
Yeah, most of the
Right,
last couple of
right.
years it's been.
And we have no business expo this year, so we have no expenses for that.
But maybe it's a good idea not to use it all in case something
True.
comes up.
Well, totally understood.
If there's other avenues.
Yeah.
Well, what I'll do is I'll resend the link out to everyone. It was on Manchester Community Television, taped it, and it's available right on their website. I'll send you the direct link and the presentation, and I'll solicit feedback from those communities and see what they gained out of it. And I mean, is it a preference to bring that feedback back, or talk to them and see if you can? Do members want to contact those communities directly? How do you?
No,
I mean, I feel if you could bring back
Yeah,
feedback.
I agree.
If you
Bring
can get
it
like a
back.
recap
Yeah.
from that feedback, that'd be great.
And then
Okay.
Go from there.
Yeah, I can do that.
We'll move on to project updates.
Yes, the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission did their certified sites presentation to the planning board on April 11th. Just from reading the minutes, there seemed to be some interest in it, and Chris, maybe you can, expand on that a little bit. And they were going to basically do what Southern New Hampshire Planning asked us to do, is to go onto the website, seek out more information, and they were going to discuss it at their next meeting, which will be next Thursday. Don't know, and I've inquired with the planner whether or not he's going to place that on the agenda or where he is with that.
Is this for the planning board's
Yeah.
feedback? I got to be honest, I didn't get an overwhelming hoorah feeling from the planning board. I think some of the members may be skeptical and would want to see some more benefits of it for them to take it a little more seriously. Was the vibe I got, anyway.
Well, it's kind of a new concept, so
That's it. It's new and hasn't really been tested. Some other members, like myself, think it's worthwhile to look into and, see what we can get out of it. I think it's just so new that some people were a little skeptical.
what is the skepticism?
It wasn't relayed. Will it work, basically? Will it, is the effort that it'll take to go into it, will it really help generate and attract business? At the end of the day, that's kind of what it comes down to. So I think, I know myself, I'm sure many of the other members on the board would like to have some more feedback and results and a little more of the pathway. It seemed like both the presentation that we got here and the one in the planning board was seemed a little vague to me anyway, on how it would really work, how it would attract the business in.
Well, from my own experience, the issue with getting an approved site is what you need to get it marketed.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of making it easier to get a better concept that you can get out and market
Yeah.
without spending as much money on the engineering.
Yeah.
So I think it's worthwhile. I think it's a good tool for a town to use for economic development.
Personally, I definitely saw it as a worthwhile tool, and I think anything that you can do to ease the parameters of someone buying anything to limit the red tape. And everyone knows, especially in commercial, if you're going to build something or move anything in, to know that the rules and the red tape is going to stay the same way for at least 5 years. That's the time period, right? For an extended period of time, not to worry that you're going to spend this time and money and something could change in the next couple of years. So I saw it as a huge benefit, and I know some of the other members do too.
And I think from an end user's point of view, they can get a better idea of what the possibilities are with a site versus just looking at a piece of raw land without a developer spending all this upfront money for something that may need to be tailored a little differently for each user. So I think it's a good marketing tool personally. And, it's new and it does need to be worked out, but I think Southern New Hampshire Planning is working pretty hard at it, and I think that I think they're pretty bright people, and I think that we should give them a shot.
No, and
I feel about it.
I completely agree, and I think any skepticism that was there, and I don't want to portray a negative commentary on it. I think it's just ignorance and not to have a negative, just not knowing, not knowing what is involved. If you don't have the personal experience or you've never gone down that path, I know I haven't, of what it does take to be a commercial enterprise and move into a town, then you may not know the difficulties involved in it. So to have the planning board and other members be able to see how this is really going to help on all sides, I think would be very
I
important.
don't think there's a lot of examples because it's cutting edge.
Right.
There's not a lot of states that have done it, but
Right.
I think it's good that we be on the cutting edge.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's worth a shot.
Definitely.
Tony?
As a member of the planning commission and also being on the
Access Manchester, Greater Manchester Board, or the executive committee, I've worked really hard on this certified site program. It is a brand-new program. As it was said, it's going to go nowhere unless one or more towns commit to trying to make it work.
Right.
A couple of months ago here, you talked about having a presentation so that you could consider endorsing it for the planning board to adopt. The fact is, it's going to take a lot of work to adopt a program because someone's got to draft the regulations, the proposed changes in the site plan regulations, together with Southern New Hampshire Planning. I would recommend that this committee endorse the proposal to the planning board, ask them to authorize you as a committee to actually draft those regulations and bring them back to the planning board for consideration, so that you actually can become a working group, Southern New Hampshire Planning, to make a hard and fast proposal to the planning board. It's going to go nowhere otherwise. If for no other reason than the planning board tends to be overworked on too many other things in terms of so many things that have to get done there administratively, let alone people that have to come before them for different approvals. So if you would take that as a project, I think it can be done relatively quickly and fairly stress-free in bringing something back to the planning board.
And would you be willing to help with that?
Of course I would.
That's what I wanted to get on the record. Go ahead, Tim.
I think that the thing that the planning board might be concerned with is the 5-year commitment. Because normally we have a 1-year approval process in town, that if you have an approved site plan, you have to come back each year and ask for an extension on the site plan. It's a simple process. And unless the zoning ordinances have not changed, there's no reason to deny it. The board has given out many, many extensions to a lot of people over the years. So it's possibly the 5-year window that says, look, even if zoning has a huge zoning change, you're still going to be grandfathered for that 5-year period. I think it's a good program because, we want to try to attract businesses and, get more like maybe Hooksett and Bedford have their tax base. But Hooksett and Bedford have a big advantage over us. They have the highway.
Right.
And we don't have the highway, so we have to make ourselves more attractive by another method.
Yeah.
And I think the certified plan that they're proposing is a good avenue to try to make Goffstown a little more high profile and attractive to businesses.
Definitely. And I know there are other folks on the planning board that feel that way also about anything to streamline and bring in business as long as it's done smartly. And at the same time, I am so new to the planning board and this, I would not want to come off as trying to offer why anyone would feel one way or another on the board.
The board had taken up some issues with the way to make the process a little more friendly to businesses. Streamlines it, kind of a tough word because it seems to impose the idea that you're going to make it easier or less restrictive. You have to go by the rules and regulations.
Right.
But to not discuss a lot of items at a planning board meeting was part of the proposed path of the planning board, to do a lot of those engineering items in advance so that when someone came to the board, they just talked about the color of the building and what the building was going to look like and the landscaping, not sewer and water and drainage, because those are all engineering items that the board really accepts professional opinions on and then accepts professional opinions, the town engineers' opinions, and moves forward with those kinds of ideas.
But we know we get into a lot of that stuff.
Right, but the idea was to try to put that up front. So that got taken care of at TRC prior to the actual formal hearing, but developers are hard pressed to spend money on stuff like that if they don't know if they're going to get their approvals or not. So it goes two ways. You have to be careful. The other big thing that I mentioned at the last meeting, we need to get the services to the site, which is what Southern New Hampshire Planning, they listed services that these certified sites need. One of them is the gas. And we don't have.
That's why they do it on different levels.
Right, but it's not that it can't.
I don't think gas is even on there radar.
it was.
I thought it was
It
sewer
was on
water.
their, it was on their bullet points at the meeting.
It was
I'm not
under
against it.
availability utilities, and I think
Utilities.
they did include.
They did
Within
include
the
gas.
levels.
When they said utilities, they defined it.
They defined it, sewer, water, gas, electric, and communications, power and communications. But it's not that it can't happen in Goffstown, it's just we have to get there.
Right. I agree. Charlie?
The only other thing I want to mention was, I know when Jack and Dave did their presentation, and Tony, you may know, were there any communities in the state of New York that have already been involved with this? I think part of it, when they showed one map, this was more trailblazing for New England, for our area. But are there some communities in New York or other states that we could get some feedback from and success stories that might help the planning board
It'd
see,
help
oh,
everyone.
okay, everyone. Here's some examples of some success stories that could help paint a picture, and then take it up where we would then develop the other piece and hand up to the planning
Because
board.
not only is it
I
the
don't know if that's
planning board,
available.
but once the once it goes there to the town meeting
Right.
for the voters,
And let's face it, if there are a lot of unknowns, then no one's going to
people say no
say no.
because they don't
Because
know.
that's the easy way to say it, and it's the fear of the unknown.
Exactly.
So I wasn't sure if there were any examples that Dave or Jack might be able to provide of success stories.
My understanding is in New York and in North Carolina and other places, it's a statewide program. And in North Carolina, the entire research triangle is that type of place. In New York, places like Syracuse and Rochester are active participants. One that comes to mind offhand is that Greek yogurt facility.
Chobani?
Yeah, that opened up a huge
Yeah.
facility. I believe that was this type of, kind of pre-approved type of thing.
Okay.
I'm on the state site now for New York, Build Now NY program, and they have links to their certified sites. But it's a statewide program where the state here doesn't have the funding to do it at the state level. That's where Southern New Hampshire Planning and the Manchester Chamber worked in. Let's concentrate on Southern New Hampshire, that region, and do it that way.
Speaking of that, if let's say Goffstown did get this, is there a way that the state of New Hampshire could have on their website, if a business was looking to move to New Hampshire, that the state could have a link to Goffstown?
Ed or somebody
Right.
would.
It would, because DRED is actually a participant in the certified site.
Okay.
So that gives you some preferential treatment there, that's for sure.
Well, somebody's got to start the program.
Right.
That's the difficult.
I was only wondering if there's some examples, basis what you're saying with planning, and then have us go before the town folks. They're going to say, what is this? Give me some
Yeah.
examples.
And
Where's
I
some
think
success stories?
The key is, Tim rightly points out, is really in the details. So that you really have to tailor a regulation for the town of Goffstown.
Right.
And deal with the reality here, which is not just our location and our infrastructure, but also the politics of how far the planning board might be willing to go to commit to 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, that type of issue. And what they would want to see in order to grant a certification. But as Jack and David pointed out, it's everything, the drafting of the regulation as well as the implementation is fully within the discretion of the planning board. So that we could adopt a regulation and the planning board could look at an application to participate and decide, no, we don't think it's an appropriate site, or it's an appropriate use, or there are enough utilities that are going to be available within a reasonable amount of time to provide any type of approval. So they really have control throughout the whole process.
And I think the key is going to be to get the planning board to recommend it when it goes on the warrant. We know how that works.
Yeah.
Well, that's, again, if you do it through zoning ordinance change, where I think Southern New Hampshire Planning was looking more at, can you make that change in your development regulations and the substantial development and to vest a project. And they were looking at it that way rather than a zoning ordinance change.
The zoning ordinance change is dangerous because you can't fix your mistakes. A regulation change can be fixed by the planning board every month.
I see.
So this is really a very soft entry into the program. And the fact is, the first time you see an applicant, you might want to revisit the regulation and decide it's just not going to work. because the applicant has no vested right in the regulation itself, unlike the zoning ordinance.
I just, Tony hit on it, and what Tim was talking about, maybe with the issues with the planning board, just to, if we're going to be drafting a regulation, I assume we can make it a 3-year commitment or a 2-year commitment. So I just wanted, that was the same point that I wanted to say. We don't have to make it 5-year. And what I'm hearing is we can even change it afterwards if we find it's not working for the community.
I think that from what the presenters were saying, though, is the 5-year was one of the largest benefits of this, was having that time frame. And
Sure.
I don't know if the planning board would be or would not be opposed to a 5-year. I definitely would not want to speak on their behalf. I do think them needing more information and some success stories would go a long way, just because they just don't know about it, They just
But
don't
you
know.
could draft the regulation to say up to 5 years.
Yeah.
And the planning board could decide at their meeting.
Yeah,
On a case-by-case basis.
yeah, that would be
And my concern
fantastic.
is
Wow.
We can
Yeah,
talk about
that's
the
true.
details all we want, but until someone puts a proposed regulation in front of the planning board,
You're exactly right with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
okay?
you're exactly right.
And you have to draft the regulation, then be able to explain why you came up with those particular terms,
Mhm.
so that the planning board could provide appropriate feedback and revisions.
Does anyone know what the cost is? I mean, the presenters are saying that the cost is all on the businesses that would be going, that this would not cost the town any money. Is that true? Or the landowner, or the person selling it, right?
In your regulation, you want to work in an application fee.
Yeah.
There would also be, I know that initially, the working group, Jack specifically, was looking at something like $1,000, $1,500 fee for the applicant to pay into the program, meaning to the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission program, with or without an annual fee thereafter to stay in the marketing program.
So that means if you're a seller and you want your site advertised on here, it's $1,000, $2,000, whatever it is to get on it. Okay, yep.
A one-time fee or a multi-year fee. I've been pushing them to a multi-year fee because it shows the town as well that there's a continuing marketing effort, and it's not just a one-time, we'll see you in 5 years.
So you're saying it could be a one-time fee of $1,500 or a 5-year, over 5 years, $300 a year type thing?
I'm not suggesting.
Or I'm just trying to
any
get
such thing.
an idea, and I'm not talking about numbers specifically.
If you want me to set the prices, it'll be expensive.
Well, we don't want you to set the prices then.
Because it is time-consuming, and administratively, it's burdensome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is underappreciated sometimes by the people that actually have to do work.
So what's the feeling of this board? How should we move forward with this? Do we need to, is this something we need to make a motion on to move forward with? I mean, I think Tony's right. I think if we don't take the bull by the horns, it'll never happen. We can't rely on the planning board. I agree 100%.
You'll just
They
sit,
can't-
it'll be
they
stagnant.
can't
It
do
won't
it.
go
Planning board is not going
It's
to spearhead this.
Yeah.
I did get that much of a feeling. And I think you guys are right with the drafting a presentation with the details in it for them to look at, and so they know what they're going to be discussing, and then some realistic benefit to say, this isn't just some new .com pipe dream thing. This actually can work, and this is why it would work.
But we also need to draft regulations, right?
We all have to agree on
We
it
have to
here.
agree on them.
Yeah.
Tony's can draft them, we'll just agree on them.
I've drafted them already. I mean, the model that they're using is what I put together.
And the
I actually tried to put it together for Goffstown, so a good portion of the work's done already.
And the public education is the biggest part of it, because when the TIF district tried to go through here in town, people didn't understand what incremental financing meant. They thought they were going to cost them money to do it, and it was exactly the opposite. It was going to attract business use a portion of the taxes to help with the services or whatever had to be done there, and the rest of it was going to come back to the town for a period of time. So that really wasn't vetted or explained or something correctly, and if we are going to move forward with this, we need to have a clear message that we can present to the people, the voters. when
And
it
I
comes
think that
time.
means we need to get started on it, because I think it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
I agree. On both fronts.
You have a draft already, Tony? Of what you're, like
I
a,
have my last draft. I think Jack has a more updated draft. I could circulate what I did.
is it a condensed, is it sort of a condensed version, or is it the full text?
It's written like a lawyer would write a regulation. I'll send it around. I'll get it to Derek, and I mean, you guys can take a preliminary look at it. But again, I mean, my approach when I looked at it was to make it really meaningful in terms of the cost and what really has to go into it on the part of the applicant. And
Who's gonna market the whole program? Is there a firm that's been picked out to market it?
Where do you say go? I mean, Access Greater Manchester is a
Right.
Southern New Hampshire.
Dread?
Well, it's mostly Access Greater Manchester, which is the collaborative between the commission and the Chamber of Commerce. They do have a marketing firm that has redone the logo, and I'm not sure that they're engaged for the purpose of actually pitching the program. But those of you who went to the Access Greater Manchester annual meeting, which is the video you're going to see later this month, that was your program.
How-
That's one of the programs they picked.
How far out does their reach go? Does it go beyond the state borders? Does it go into multiple states in New
That's the
England?
plan, right, is to be national.
The certified site program itself, yes, would tie into a national certified site database.
Mhm.
So when you plugged into that, you'd see New York, North Carolina, New Hampshire.
Mhm.
And then it would drill down to southern New Hampshire and then specifically to whatever towns it potentially has.
And do we need to worry about the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce promoting themselves more than the rest of us?
You know, that was a huge issue with what they used to call Metro Center. What the heck was it? And what the heck is it doing? And when I first got involved at David Priest's request, I told him, I'll come to a meeting, but you gotta explain what you're doing. And the fact is, it was impossible to figure out. A lot has been done in the last year and a half. The change of the name is one thing, but I think it's very meaningful. The fact is they've adopted, and they're pushing forward programs like the Certified Site Program. So they have a product. They have something to sell. They have something to market. And it's not being driven strictly by the chamber. That kind of tension as to who's really in charge has really been settled out. And the commission has taken a more direct role.
And the whole push is on being regional versus any one particular town. And so,
I'll believe that when I see it.
But Goffstown typically, including Joanne, who's actually there for Hooksett most of the time, usually has 4 or 5, 6 people there. Okay, that's out of the group that's, what, 20?
max, yeah.
So we have a very deep voice on those issues there, and I think it's paid off. And again, I'm going to harp upon what I always do, as you said, Tim, we don't have the highway. When it talks to we talk about the development of the airport, Pettingill Road in Londonderry. We talk about what's going on up in Hooksett at Exit 10. The fact is, the widening of 93, we're the tail wagging the dog. If we're not on the forefront of these issues, we're nowhere to be seen. So it's worth it to us to do it, if only because we have a seat at the table.
I agree.
So can I ask, so have we endorsed this to the planning board yet? As a
At
committee?
last month, you endorsed them to consider it and to hold a public hearing to get the input from the community into what this program could be. That's what was endorsed at last month's EDC meeting.
Okay, and they got that?
They did get that,
information.
yes.
And then, it sounds like Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission has the most current up-to-date regulations.
They
Is that what I'm
would.
hearing?
Draft, yeah.
Draft? You know, I mean, maybe that should be circulated then for us to at least read into it and get an idea of what we would be, you know, putting forward before we make any motion. I think I'd like to read it.
Better know what we're endorsing before
Yeah.
we're endorsing.
Right.
I don't think we need to make a motion to endorse it. I just think we need to make a motion to say we would be the ones to move forward with it, and to say that, you know, we would draft regulations, we would be the ones that would bring it to the planning board in a more detailed manner.
At that point, that would be the time to endorse it to the board, but endorsing to the board without that information.
Well, I guess
think
then
would-
we just need to have a consensus that we're interested in moving forward with this.
If the consensus is you want to see the regulations and you want examples of success stories in other states where this
Yeah.
happens, I'll bring that to you in a month.
Okay, perfect.
And actually, I'll get the regulations to you as soon as I can. That way you have a chance to read through them,
We can
study
maybe
them,
edit or work.
make
and say,
notes. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Keep in mind, when you say the regulations, it's a template
Mhm.
that is there for, here's an idea of what to do.
Right.
Fact is, you've got to commit to redrafting them to fit the needs of your town.
So it sounds like get the information, make the commitment, redraft them, endorse it, and become the catalyst to get it up to the planning board. Is that
Our
correct?
recommendation
For their recommendation is then
To
take
be
it
put on the
before the
warrant.
town.
We'd have to make the presentation ourselves as a committee
to the
to
planning
the
board.
planning board. Can't just be dumped in their lap. You have to
Oh, I agree.
sit at the end of the table right
No,
there
no,
and talk
it's
about
But
it.
I also don't like the idea of continuing to say, okay, next month, let's get some information. Let's move on to next month and talk about this some more,
Yeah, we can.
because there's only one meeting a month.
Yeah.
Before you know it, the year's gone and we haven't got there.
Does this require any kind of an article?
Tony?
No.
Article-
I don't think it
You mean
requires
on
an
the
article.
town, on the
No, I
town
don't
warrant?
think
No,
it-
it
no, it
wouldn't.
Just
doesn't.
need to get the planning board to
Planning board
adopt
needs
it.
to have a proposed regulation,
They have to-
decide they consider adopting it. I think they need to have a
Public hearing.
Yeah.
to take comment on the regulation, and they would adopt it the same way they'd adopt a new subdivision rule.
But
Oh,
it's not
okay.
a town vote on this.
It's not a town
Not a
vote.
town
Okay.
vote at all.
Oh,
That
good.
helps.
Could we ask Chris, here on the planning board, to get feedback in this month as to what some of the concerns may have been, or what the planning board would
If
like
they
to
have
see?
more
'Cause that would
specific
be,
concerns?
Yeah, it would be
I can
nice.
ask them that next meeting. and
so
then
that
they
when we
can-
meet next month,
Mhm.
we have a better understanding of, you know, they loved it, they hated the 5-year thing. You know, they would like to see it 2, and that would be important to know.
But Tony's language works. You could draft
Does.
it to up to 5 years. That gives the board the discretion to say, look, this is a tough site. We'd like to give you a 3-year
Right, on a
approval on it.
case-by-case basis, they could decide.
Or
they have the
you could have this
flexibility.
beautiful site that's
Approval.
all sand and gravel and flat, and you could put most anything you want on it and say, yeah, we can give them a 5-year approval on that site because it'll bear whatever needs.
But Tim, what I don't want to do is go into the planning board and get blind, you know, not know that they had an issue with this.
Oh, no, we need to get their input
Ahead of
before
time,
we even start
so we
arguing.
can present.
And the biggest thing is from what I got anyway, was they just don't feel like they know much about it yet.
Well, I guess that's our job to educate them.
Exactly. So I think I can go into the next meeting, ask them what any of their concerns are about this, bring that to us for the next meeting, and in the meantime, I think we should start working on drafting the proposal and getting the
Can you-
nitty-gritty down.
Can you get it on the agenda so that you can ask those questions? You know,
Right.
would it already be on the planning board agenda?
I have no idea.
At least a discussion?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I can,
Chairman can put anything on the agenda. they
right.
want.
I mean, I'm sure I can have them ask that anyway.
But they're gonna want to know what we're gonna talk about. They're not gonna have a lot of input without knowing what we want to do.
That's it. Right now, I mean,
They've got
they're,
input based on that presentation from
Right.
Southern New Hampshire Planning.
so their concerns are going to be very
If they could
vague.
focus on that presentation, or what they do know and send it back to us, that gets us off on the right foot
Right.
to move in the right direction.
Okay.
I'd also be willing to schedule a kind of a working group walkthrough of that model regulation for anyone who could attend. And maybe we could just walk through it together between now and the next meeting, so you have a greater sense as to what can be done, or if anything should be done, or if you should just jettison the whole concept. I'll work with Derek and propose a couple of dates that people can attend.
And then when it comes time to go to the board, being a former member and Steve having been an applicant on many occasions, I don't think, I would be happy to go and represent the EDC as long as you'll come along and provide your input. I think that if you have a rapport with the board, it helps you get your point across and understand what they might be thinking of.
And if you have a business owner.
So I think we have to, we'll work towards our plan of attack as we progress with this. I just don't want to prolong the process. And
You
never
still may
make
be
it
several
happen.
months. to
Yeah,
draft the regulation.
yeah, this is not going to happen in 2 meetings.
Oh, I understood, but I don't want it to be,
Don't want it drifting out for months.
I don't want it to just not happen
Well, it's
because
right
we
here on the
continue to
agenda.
ask for information and never act.
Your legacy as president of this committee.
Yeah.
And on the subject of the services, even though I was only sworn in tonight, I took it upon myself. I called Liberty Utilities this week, and I tried to get in touch with one of their engineers to find out what the feeling would be about expanding the gas service down to the Shell station area. So I'm waiting on some information from Liberty Utilities.
Did anyone read the article in the Union Leader a couple weeks ago about Nashua expanding their compressed natural gas? They're the largest facility in New England.
That's different. That compressed natural gas facility powers their vehicles.
Right.
It's got nothing to do with businesses and heating and stuff like that.
So it is a different form.
It's the same product, but
Right.
it's a different type of a situation. What they're doing is they're powering their public works fleet.
No, I know, and
They're trying to
that's-
open it up to like anybody who wants to buy a vehicle that runs on compressed natural gas.
Exactly, but that's something that if we did wind up running the lines down, it's something I've been interested in exploring the last couple. I've been thinking about the last couple of years, trying to find out. I mean, not only does Goffstown need to generate more money, but we need to save money, and the only way we're going to do that is by thinking outside the box. And so, I don't know what our buses and trash trucks and all that run, but I do know I've seen YouTube videos of people just taking in conversion kits for their Yukons or whatever, $1,500, $2,000, and now they're pulling into the Shell in Utah that offers compressed natural gas and filling up at $1.60 a gallon as opposed to $4 a gallon, and getting 90% of the distance out of a tank, saving a ridiculous amount of money, and a lot of towns are doing this.
That article did also say that to purchase a vehicle that runs on compressed natural gas is 25 or 30% more expensive than to buy it.
Right,
So
but
there's investment involved on the town side, and the town has been very, very unwilling to invest in a lot of vehicles and that type of stuff in the budgets over the last 5 or 6 years, having been on CIP. And
No, I
seeing it
know,
come
and-
snowballing back like a tidal wave. So
And I
getting
saw
there
that
is
too.
a mindset, Chris.
No, I know, and I saw that also, but like I said, it's something I've wanted to look into, but I saw conversion kits, not having to buy a vehicle that's already set up for,
I see.
literally a kit that you can go down, buy your Dodge Durango, and then put this kit in, and it was only $1,500. And if you can, even that's going to cost money, but if you can tell a town, hey, look, we're spending $300,000 a year on diesel, and if we invest $100,000, we're going to save $150,000 a year forever.
I think you should volunteer for CIP.
I'm
Okay,
on,
I think
I'm
we're
on
getting
enough that I
distracted.
don't know about right now.
We need to move on. So, any more discussion on certified sites? We'll wait till next month and Derek comes back with the
As soon as I get the
information.
regulations, I'll send those out. And so you
Tony's
can
gonna
start to get an
work
idea
on
of
a
those. Yep.
workshop.
The next item is, this weekend is the Plan Penardville Planapalooza. You have a schedule, I provided everyone a schedule here. It's on the Planapalooza website and Facebook. If you can only make one presentation, please try to make the Friday, May 3rd, from 6 to 8:30. That's the opening presentation, and that's the hands-on workshop where we will be sitting around tables with maps of Pinardville and start making notes on what works, what doesn't, identifying with, dots like we've done in the past and in other ones. So if you can only make that's the one I'd ask you to make. If you can't make that one, on Saturday morning from 9 to 10, there is a roundtable meeting for elected and appointed officials. And otherwise, if the lights are on, the consultants will be in there. And the consultants understand that some people are not as willing to go to public events and speak honestly and openly what they feel about the development. So if you want to go in and just talk to the consultants by yourself, if you're more comfortable doing that, they will take that feedback as well.
Unfortunately, I'm away this week, and it was planned before I even decided to run for office. I'm supposed to be leaving Friday morning, come back Sunday night. Is there something on Monday and Tuesday that I can attend that would be worthwhile, or should I try to postpone my plans and leave late Friday night?
Tuesday is the closing presentation where it's like a wrap-up of this is the feedback we got, this is where we see the plan and the code going. So that's really a wrap-up. If you can't make the Friday one, I would suggest, Monday morning if you're able to shoot in there, or Sunday night, not knowing your plans, if you can make up the pinup presentation. Sunday night is a pinup review of they're started down a path, and it's kind of the course correction to fix, if somebody says, oh, I don't think you should go in that direction, that's kind of that point. But even if, and the other option is if you have some specific concerns you want to voice, email them tonight when you get home. Send them to Brian.
Okay.
Because he'll get that to them as well.
I came in and sat in front of the video thing and talked to that guy for a while with my concerns.
Oh, okay. So you've already talked to
Right.
the consultant a little bit. Yeah. So you've already given quite a bit of feedback. But yeah, Monday, if you're able to stop in for 15 minutes Monday morning, that might be a good time to just see what feedback they got over the weekend, where they're going.
And is that what Sunday night is also? Sunday night saying so?
Sunday night is the pinup review. That's where they'll start getting into, spaces that have been identified as potential redevelopment spots.
Okay.
The important civic spaces or where people like to gather. That's where they're going to start showing where they kind of the framework of where they're going.
So since I've already given my testimony to the consultant person, is that pretty much what I would do if I went Friday night at 6 o'clock anyway?
I don't know what questions he asked you, because you were in one of the policymaker interviews, which all the planning board prepared, and so I don't know exactly what he asked to you.
Okay.
I know that he's going to do an opening presentation on what their goals are while they're here for the 5 days, kind of explain how the process goes. And then like I said, we're going to be breaking up into round tables with a map around it, and people are going to be drawing on it with a marker and marking it up, and that's what we're going to be doing Friday. So my guess is you may have been talking more policies or things that you like or don't like, whereas we're going to be working a little bit more on looking at the actual Pinardville space and marking up things and giving them an idea.
I'll see if I can postpone. So I'd really like to do what I can for this.
Anything else on that?
No, unless anyone had any questions.
I do. I'm sorry. Just a formality for me to ask the planning board. Do I need to email the chair to put this question on the agenda? Do I email Brian Rose, or can I just ask them? Okay, so
send it to Brian, and he'll communicate with. Is it John? Is
John
the-
Eichel,
yeah, he's the chairman. Yeah, he'll communicate with John about setting the agenda.
okay,
So
just so I can get this question on the agenda.
Brian just
Okay.
sets the agenda. He never tells anybody.
Okay.
Believe me, I know. And it's fine. He does a great job.
And I apologize also, just so I have the wording correct. We're putting together a proposal for the planning board. What's the,
For the certified sites program?
yeah,
I think the question would be, did any of the members have specific questions or concerns based on the presentation they saw on April 11th?
okay, that's simple
When
enough.
is the next planning board meeting?
next Thursday, which is the 9th.
Packets go out tomorrow, so you better, Friday's when the packets go out. So if you can get it to Brian, he can include it in the agenda.
Okay.
The next item is the 293 Exit 6 and 7 planning study. The Board of Selectmen has scheduled a presentation from the engineer VHB on May 20th, so that's a week and a half, Monday night at 7 p.m. That'll be here in Town Hall. I've sent that invitation. I know I've heard back from a couple of you that you will be able to attend. We've invited Senator D'Alessandro to come, and I believe he will be able to attend that meeting. And it will be a chance for the Board of Selectmen, EDC, and Planning Board to see that presentation at the same time and give some feedback. It's really kind of an informational meeting.
Go ahead.
Is this in the 10-year plan, or is this being proposed to be entered into the 10-year plan?
I honestly don't know, Tony.
It's already in the 10-year plan.
It is in the 10-year plan?
And it's been identified for specific out-year funding from non-state sources and outside of the regular federal money. So it's specific grant money that will build it. But we're a year away from finishing the first phase of the planning process, for at least 6 months. And then we're 2 years into the environmental impact statement phase. This phase is going to make a recommendation for what should be studied. Okay? And then from there, and when you say environmental impact, it's not just the trees and the wetlands and things like that, it's all of the issues, including the cost issues and whatnot. And then once that is done, a final proposal for what's going to get built and funded then moves forward through the process. So it's a long, excruciating process.
Has anybody put any educated guesses on its success? Is it up there?
Something's going to be built. Here's the big issue, okay? Goffstown has been pushing for the new Exit 7 to be built further north of the landfill on the Hooksett Manchester line. That's also the best thing for the Manchester Community College. It goes north of the landfill, and the question is, does it stop at Dunbarton Road
Right.
and never get to Goffstown, or does it come all the way to Goffstown Neck Road? The price differential is up to $10 million on a $35 to $45 million project. So the importance of it from an economic perspective needs to be balanced against a lot of issues, not just the wetland issues, the creek crossing issues, but also that cost differential. So we need to ensure as a town that our economic development needs are made a high priority in the first recommendation. We've already made some progress in that regard. The engineers from VHB are supportive of going with a recommendation, one of several, but at least one that gets us all the way to Goffstown, in order to make sure that at the EIS segment, that gets more careful consideration. But if we're not there to say it needs to be done that way, it's easier to say, yeah, let's take the easy, cheaper way out.
The only other big question, Tony, is the piece of road that Manchester controls. Have they expressed any willingness to work with the town of Goffstown if that traffic would be able to enter the highway at Straw Road and Goffstown Back Road? Or are they going to hold ground and the ramp will be built to the intersection and you still won't be able to get to Goffstown?
It's not been a topic of conversation among the technical advisory committee, but the reality is if that road gets all the way to Goffstown, it can't be built unless Manchester opens up that area.
Technically, it's not going to go to Goffstown. Technically, it's going to end in Manchester.
That's correct.
So Manchester will have control over the roads.
But because it'll be federal money coming in, all those issues will be controlled at a much higher level than the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So that's why it's critically important. Now, Manchester has a lot of land to be developed on Dunbarton Road, less so on Straw Road. So as far as Manchester's concerned, they might be happy with the earlier stop rather than the later stop. But those issues can't be addressed until we get into phase 2. Okay, and
I mean, the presentation that I saw at the aldermanic chambers also showed a big aggressive plan to deal with exit 6. Is that tied to it, or is that separate from it?
the pitch that we, meaning Goffstown, has tried to make is if you give the Goffstown back road direct access to exit 7, it will divert traffic away from exit 6. So that you potentially could do less at exit 6. The reality of the way the engineers look at this, and I do, is they're going to spend as much money as they possibly can to make the biggest and best intersection in both places.
Well, they've already identified that exit 6 as a failed engineering design, the way you have to crisscross and everything in that intersection. The plans they showed at that meeting were very clean to reconstruct the ramps so that they work like normal on and off ramps do and clean that whole mess up there. And I'm sure they're going to want to move forward with that as a tie to it. They even talked about possibly doing some work where you get off by the GIR radio towers and reconstruct those ramps, make an on-ramp there to go north on 293 and then reduce something up the line up by the college.
From what I understand, 6 and 7 are forever tied together. They're both going to be done. And that decision was made a long, long time ago.
Good.
So we certainly don't want to be in a position where they redevelop exit 6 and nothing gets done on 7. 7 has a lot more political pull because of the fact that the college is there, and they have a huge expansion plan, and they need better access.
They want direct access to the highway is what they want.
They want direct access to that.
Right. And they'll get that as a part of that plan. And that's huge for us because they're the leaders. They're the ones driving that whole program, not us. We're just sort of an auxiliary benefit to it.
Right.
Thank you.
Again, we're the tail wagging the dog, so we need to bark from one end or the other.
Thank you, Tony.
Any other questions on that? Want to move on to other business?
The only other business I have on the agenda is just to highlight a couple upcoming meetings. On the 14th, which is a Tuesday afternoon at the Greater Chamber of Commerce over in Manchester on Hanover Street, is the Access Greater Manchester regular meeting. That's from 3 to 5. And then just reiterate the presentation of the I-293 planning study on May 20th. And then the only other thing is normally in May, usually around this time, the Board of Selectmen has set their goals for the year. I understand the Board of Selectmen is still working on their goals, but usually Economic Development Council in the past has waited till the board sets their goals and kind of sees how they're guiding and what they're doing, and we would set our goals. So maybe at next month's meeting we'll have those goals to set EDC goals for the year. But if there's other projects, I know I've heard Tim talk about, TIF district. If there's other things that the EDC wants to start working on, you can give me a call anytime or talk to Steve and get the ball rolling on those.
What is the meeting for the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce?
I don't know what the subject is yet. We haven't received an agenda for that. It's the Regional Economic Development. It's a partnership between Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission and the Chamber. And every other month they meet, and they usually have a presenter. Last month, or in March, they had Pettingale Road off the airport, and they discussed that. So I'm not certain what the agenda is for the May 14th meeting, but as soon as I get that, I'll email that out to members.
Okay.
They've asked me to be on a panel of economic development members from different towns, so I think it's going to be about, economic development councils and what we do and how we impact the region. That's my guess.
Okay.
He said the agenda would come out. So.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other business? Other discussion? Good, John.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that. Second too. Meeting adjourned. Well, sorry.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Nobody opposed.
Any abstentions?
And the next meeting will be on June 5th, but I'll get those regulations, those draft regulations out to you as soon as I get them.